Hi, I'm Gary Smith. My research project is the Battle of Sullivan's Island, which was an overwhelming American victory that occurred on June the 28th, 1776. And this was about a week before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The Battle of Sullivan's Island arose out of the Southern expedition that King George signed off on in the fall of 1775, which was intended to restore loyalist governments in the four southern colonies of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The British government believed that loyalty to the crown was greatest in the southern colonies than in the radicalized northern colonies such as Massachusetts. My research questions are threefold. How did the British government go about preparing militarily and logistically for a southern expedition? And why was Sullivan's Island selected as a target of the southern expedition? And the third and final question is, what was the result of the Patriots being victorious in the Battle of Sullivan's Island? The plan of the southern expedition that George III approved had a lot of moving parts. General Henry Clinton with 1,200 British regulars, would travel by ship from Boston to the mouth of the Cape Fear River in North Carolina, where he and his soldiers would meet up with a force of an anticipated 10,000 loyalists raised by the former North Carolina Royal Governor Josiah Martin. Showing up at the same time at the Cape Fear River would be a fleet of 50 ships under the command of Sir Peter Parker, Commodore Sir Peter Parker. The fleet would transport 2,500 British regulars under the command of General Charles Cornwallis. General Clinton would be the overall commander of the Southern expedition to restore loyalist governments in the southern colonies. That was the British plan. But as Robert Burns said so wisely, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. The 50-ship British fleet and 2,500 soldiers were in fact assembled at Cork Island, according to the plan, but the fleet was to depart no later than December the 1st, 1775. However, it did not depart until mid-February of 1776. And also because of horrendous Atlantic storms, it took 3 whole months for Sir Parker's fleet to reach the Cape Fear River. General Clinton and his 1,200 soldiers reached the Cape Fear River on March the 12th, 1776. General Clinton expected to find Sir Parker's fleet there, but Sir Parker's fleet did not begin to straggle in until mid-May. Also, Josiah Martin's 10,000 North Carolina loyalists never materialized. Martin raised 1,500 loyalists, but they had been intercepted at Moore's Creek Bridge by 1,000 well-armed North Carolina rebels. 30 or more loyalists were killed or wounded, and the remainder captured. So when General Clinton arrived at the mouth of the Cape Fear River, he learned that no loyalists were coming. Without the anticipated loyalists, which was a critical part of the plan, North Carolina was no longer viable as a place to start the southern expedition. But in late May, Clinton received a report that Sullivan's Island at the mouth of Charlestown Harbor was defended by a vulnerable, unfinished fortification. Clinton ordered the fleet to sail promptly to Charlestown to attack and occupy Sullivan's Island. General Clinton intended to take and hold the unfinished fort on Sullivan's Island and then besiege Charlestown until it capitulated. Charlestown would be the place where loyalists would rally. Once restored to legal authority, the plan was to destroy all rebel forces in the vicinity, cut the southern colonies in half, and used Charlestown as a logistical base of operation to support a two-pronged offensive against the rebel governments in Georgia and North Carolina. This is a map that shows the positions of British and American forces in the vicinity of Charlestown in June of 1776. Copyright restrictions, if any, are not applicable because the map is being presented in a classroom setting. General Clinton, 3,000 British troops were located here at Long Island, which is the modern name for Long Island is the Isle of Palms. He had 10 artillery pieces, 3 men of war with 24 naval guns and 15 armed flatboats. He was absolutely mortified when he learned that between here and Sullivan, this is Sullivan's Island, he was absolutely mortified when he learned that at low tide, the water level was 7 feet. He had read in a report that it was 18 inches at low tide. His plan had been just simply to walk at low tide, just to walk from here to Sullivan's Island and to attack the island. He wasn't able to do that, so he had, if attack was to take place, he'd have to use flatboats. Sullivan's Island, the northeastern part of Sullivan's Island, was the responsibility of William Thompson, and he had 780 patriots with 2 cannons. The southwestern portion of Sullivan's Island was commanded by Colonel William Moultrie with 435 patriots and 31 cannon. The Admiral or Commodore Parker had 9 British men of war and 260 naval guns, which were here, and he was using those naval guns to fire broadsides at Fort Sullivan. This is just a schematic of Fort Sullivan, which of course is here. In this area is Mount Pleasant, and then further on would be Charleston, which would be about right here. Charleston was 7 miles from Sullivan's Island. The battle went terribly wrong for the British Navy. The Navy fired broadsides at Fort Sullivan, but the fort, made of sections of palmetto logs filled with sand, absorbed the shelling. The ships were easy targets for marksmen and artillery from Fort Sullivan. The British men of war suffered severe damage. One British ship, the Action, was grounded on a sandbar and was deliberately burned to the waterline by the British before they left. The American losses were 12 killed and 25 wounded, and the British losses were 220 killed and wounded. The American victory marked the end of the Southern expedition. After this battle, British soldiers were loaded back onto troop ships and transported to New York. However, the British, under General Clinton, returned almost 4 years later and was successful in capturing Charleston in May of 1780. The conclusion of my research is that a British victory in the Battle of Sullivan's Island would have been disastrous for a young country that had just declared its independence. But the fact that patriots won the battles served to constrain British Southern ambitions for almost 4 years, which was precious time that the patriots needed. Thank you very much.